Hello and welcome to the Nebraska Department of Transportation's US-275 Norfolk to Wisner public hearing to discuss the environmental assessment and preliminary engineering. The purpose of this public hearing is to present the project and gather public input as part of the National Environmental Policy Act, also known as NEPA. The project team is looking for feedback on the impacts of the preferred alternative and the draft EA. NDOT and the Federal Highway Administration, or FHWA, will formally respond in writing to all comments received during the comment period. We'll begin with an overview of the project, then we'll discuss the draft environmental assessment, potential impacts, and next steps. So what is the National Environmental Policy Act? NEPA established a mandate for federal agencies, including FHWA, to consider the potential human and natural environmental consequences of their actions, to document these impacts, and to make the information publicly available for comment. FHWA, in partnership with NDOT, is the designated lead federal agency for this project action. NEPA is addressed for the proposed project through an Environmental Assessment NEPA document, generally referred to as an EA. Currently, the draft EA is ready for review and comment. The draft EA examines project benefits as well as potential impacts on both the natural and human environment. We'll discuss these impacts in detail in upcoming slides. With that, let's move into the project overview. US-275 is a critical highway in Nebraska's transportation network that connects northeast Nebraska to Interstate 80 and the Omaha metropolitan area. It provides access to vital services in the region, including employment opportunities, social services, healthcare, and education services. NDOT has invested over $450 million into the expressway system and has steadily advanced US-275 expressway construction. The green segments are completed expressway. We're constructing the remaining US-275 expressway in 3 segments. The Scribner to West Point segment, shown here in blue, is under construction with anticipated completion in 2024. Next is the Norfolk to Wisner segment, which is the project we're talking about today. It's shown in yellow and is currently in design, with construction anticipated to start in 2025. Lastly, the Wisner to West Point segment is shown in red. It's currently being designed and is anticipated to go to construction in 2026. The proposed project, known as Norfolk to Wisner, would expand the existing 2-lane highway to a 4-lane expressway. The project would begin east of Norfolk, about 0.3 of a mile east of the intersection of US 275 and Nebraska Highway 57, at approximately mile marker 86. It would extend east and south to approximately 17th Street in Wisner, near mile marker 102, where it would tie into the existing US 275 4-lane roadway. Project grading and construction would begin east of N57, but the environmental study area extends west of N57 to capture potential construction transition elements such as lighting, signage, and construction traffic control. The purpose of the project is to fulfill legislative intent to continue development of the expressway system identified in the 1988 Nebraska Highway Needs Study. Improve regional connectivity for vehicles in northeast Nebraska, including commercial vehicles, by providing important expressway connections with Nebraska highways N57, N15, and N51, while maintaining convenient highway access for communities in the area. And maximize use of existing transportation infrastructure, including connecting highways and existing right-of-way, improve the condition of the existing infrastructure, and maximize the cost-effectiveness of the project. The improvements on this project would use a 2+2 construction approach. This would expand the existing 2-lane highway to a 4-lane expressway by constructing a new parallel 2-lane roadway, including drainage structures, that would be adjacent to the existing US-275. The existing 2 lanes of US-275 would be resurfaced, and the existing bridges and drainage structures would be repaired or replaced as needed. In addition to mainline US-275 construction, the project may include improvements at the US-275 intersections with N57, N15, and N51, as well as various county roads. In 2011, the Build Nebraska Act was enacted, which provided additional funding for the expressway system, including the US-275 corridor. In 2016, the Transportation Innovation Act was enacted, which accelerated highway capital improvement projects, also including the US-275 corridor. On this project, environmental studies and preliminary design began, and a public information meeting occurred in 2019. After this initial meeting, NDOT pursued additional federal grant funding for the project and collaborated with resource agencies to evaluate alternatives through 2022. In 2023, we identified the preferred alternative in partnership with FHWA and are holding this public hearing. The 2+2 construction concept would construct 2 new lanes adjacent to the existing 2 lanes of US-275 to create a 4-lane corridor. Using the 2+2 approach allows the improvements to be constructed without a detour. While the new lanes are being built on one side, traffic is maintained on the existing lanes. Once the new lanes are completed, traffic is shifted onto the new lanes, 1 lane in each direction, while the existing roadway and bridges are repaired and resurfaced. Once the repairs to the existing roadway are complete, the new expressway segment would be open to 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. This approach would minimize traffic disruption, maximize the use of existing roadway, and minimize environmental and community impacts. 5 alternatives were developed, all of which would meet the project purpose and need. When we presented the project in 2019, we expected to consider 2 alternatives. The first alternative was widen north. This would involve constructing a new parallel 2-lane roadway north of existing US-275. The second alternative was widen south. All aspects of this alternative would be the same as the widen north alternative, except that the new roadway would be to the south. Agency coordination and further investigation identified a waterway which warranted the development of 3 additional alternatives to avoid it. The first additional alternative is the combined. This would be a combination of the widen north and widen south alternatives. It was developed to avoid a waterway in the south ditch near the N15 East Junction. This would involve the new lanes being placed south of US-275 for a majority of the corridor, but would flip to the north side between 575th Avenue in Stanton County and 4th Road in Cumming County. The fourth alternative is on structure. This would use bridges to avoid and minimize wetland impacts. It could be built with construction of new lanes on either side of the existing lanes. A preliminary review indicates that approximately 12 new bridges would be required, totaling nearly 2.5 miles in total length. The last alternative is widen south plus shift. This follows the same alignment as the widen south alternative, except between 575th Avenue in Stanton County and 2nd Road in Cumming County. In that area, the eastbound lanes would shift approximately 150 feet to the south to avoid a waterway in the south ditch of the existing roadway. To identify a preferred alternative, NDOT evaluated impacts and considered input from the public as well as federal and state resource agencies. For this project, the widen south plus shift was selected as the preferred alternative because it best fits the purpose and need while considering any potential environmental, social, and economic impacts. This slide shows a typical section within the proposed project. The new roadway would be constructed on the south side of the existing roadway. There would be 2 12-foot wide lanes with an 8-foot wide paved shoulder on the outside and 4-foot wide paved shoulder on the inside. NDOT would resurface and reuse the existing roadway to preserve the existing asset, save costs, and reduce the time to complete the project. The majority of the median would be approximately 54 feet wide, but there are areas where the median would be wider. In the hills on the west end, the median would be approximately 78 to 92 feet wide. The reason for the differing median widths is due to the new lanes being constructed at different elevations and the addition of snow control in certain areas. In the vicinity of the N15 East Junction, the median is 200 feet wide to accommodate the widen south plus shift alternative, which avoids the waterway. If you would like a closer look at these median widths, please see the scroll maps. Now let's discuss the Draft Environmental Assessment, or Draft EA, and potential impacts. The Draft EA considers and evaluates project impacts on the natural environment, such as water quality, wetlands, fish, and wildlife, as well as the human environment, which includes socioeconomics, noise, historic resources, recreational properties, and hazardous materials. The Draft EA is available for review and comment online. There are also copies at several physical locations, which we will list at the end of this presentation. In terms of impacts, there are two historic properties located within the existing project area. First is the former Pilger Rest Area located north of the existing highway between 570th and 571st Avenues. The rest area was constructed in the mid-1960s. It is now privately owned and used for farmers markets and other activities. No impacts are anticipated to this site. The second is the Sharp Homestead Archaeological Site located south of the existing highway near the west junction of US-275 and N15. This is believed to be the location of the first homestead in Stanton County, and it dates back to 1865. The project would have an adverse effect on this historic site, which would be handled by archaeological data recovery in accordance with Section 106 of the Historic Preservation Act. Impacts to wetlands and waterways are anticipated and would require a Clean Water Act Section 404 individual permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The project, as proposed, would impact approximately 13 acres of wetland and stream channel resources. Water resource impacts would be mitigated at appropriate sites that may include off-site locations generally near the US-275 corridor. The project is anticipated to impact Wisner Pilger Public Schools track and practice fields and would require acquisition of right-of-way and easements for construction of an offset right turn lane at 21st Street and realignment of 18th Street. A portion of the practice field in the southwest corner of the property would be acquired and would require relocation of a shot put and discus pad. The final location of the new pad would be determined through coordination with the school. The unused shot put and discus pad southeast of the track and football field would be removed. This acquisition would not affect the continued use of the field for practice. Impacts on the property would be considered a use under Section 4F of the Transportation Act of 1966. 4F was intended to protect historic properties, parks, and recreation areas. Impacts are not anticipated to adversely affect the use or enjoyment of the school property. Access to and/or use of this property would be maintained. There are a few other impacts we'd like to mention. Right-of-way would be acquired primarily south of the existing roadway. A minor amount of right-of-way would be required from a few parcels north of the existing roadway for driveway construction and laying back slopes for snow control. Access control would most likely be acquired along both sides of the highway. This means that the number of accesses or driveways allowed onto the highway would be limited. No residential or business acquisitions or relocations are anticipated. The project may impact existing center pivot irrigation systems. The final determination on any center pivot relocations would be made during final design. Owners would be compensated for impacts during right-of-way acquisition. The project may affect, but is not likely to adversely affect, the endangered northern long-eared bat. A noise study has been prepared and is available for review at the in-person public hearing. It identified impacts on some properties but did not warrant any mitigation. The project would be constructed in two segments along US-275. The west segment goes through N57 to approximately 1 mile east of the N15 East Junction. The east segment starts 1 mile east of the N15 East Junction and continues to the west end of Wisner. Both segments would be constructed under traffic, with lane closures controlled by appropriate traffic control devices and practices. Temporary surfacing may be required to accommodate phased construction. Short detours for county roads may be needed to construct intersections, but adjacent county roads would not be closed at the same time. Access to adjacent properties would be maintained during construction, but may be limited at times due to traffic phasing requirements. Now let's talk about next steps. Our timeline starts with this public hearing. Many activities need to occur before construction could start, including final design, right-of-way acquisition, and NDOT awarding the project to a contractor. Construction is anticipated to begin in spring 2025, with anticipated completion in 2028. Project costs are estimated at $104 million. Now let's go back to the US-275 expressway overview. The Scribner to West Point segment is under construction, with anticipated completion in 2024. Estimated costs are $90 million. This project, Norfolk to Wisner, is currently in design, with construction anticipated to start in 2025. Its estimated cost, $104 million. Lastly, the Wisner to West Point segment is currently being designed and is anticipated to go to construction in 2026. Estimated costs are $90 million, and it would be state-funded. The project would not be eligible for federal aid. The total construction cost for all three segments is $284 million. Construction on the entire US 275 corridor is expected to be complete in 2029. The draft environmental assessment is available at the locations listed on the screen or on the project website. Comments will be collected through January 22, 2024. For those without internet access, information may be obtained at the NDOT headquarters or by contacting Lucas Nelson or Kevin Damagala. The project team is looking for feedback on the impacts of the preferred alternative and the draft EA. The final EA will address comments we received during the comment period. We'll provide a reply to those who raise a question, need further clarification, or specifically request a response. We will consider every comment before moving forward with this project. The final EA will be posted on the NDOT website once it's completed, including the final comments provided throughout the comment period. Thank you all for your time and participation.